Anti-Afro, Spingali's. I'm going to clue you into a couple things about Umar Johnson. And this really takes me back to the reason why I started doing videos on Umar Johnson. I wonder if you can figure out when Umar Johnson is really angry. Have you noticed? When Umar Johnson is the most angry, it is not when he's the loudest. When Umar Johnson is the loudest, he's in full mode. Clownery, acting the fool, hyena yelping all over the place. People are just laughing and having a good old time. It doesn't matter how serious the subject is. He's acting like a rank-ass fool wherever he is. Do you remember that presentation he did saying child support? He's talking about child support. Even though he's talking about child support, he was still in theatrical mode, just a clown. But there are times when Umar Johnson, make no mistake about it, the anger is off the chart. Listen to this clip.
It's a question to the mothers and grandmothers. If you are a mother or grandmother, would you invite your grandchild's grandfather to your house if you know he don't have a good relationship with his son to be with his child behind his back? I'm talking to mothers and grandmothers. Would you invite your grandbaby's grandfather over your house to spend time with your grandbaby when you know him and his father don't get along and he don't want his father around his child, and the baby daddy can't even see his own child? The baby daddy can't even see his own child. But y'all gonna bring Grandpa Johnson, or that's what your mother and grandmother did and your grandfather did. Grandpa Johnson, my biological father. You said he reached out to you. I don't know why Grandpa Johnson reached out to you, because Grandpa Johnson knows I don't like him being in contact with you without my permission. Grandpa Johnson had no business reaching out to you because Grandpa Johnson knows I don't mess with him and I don't want him in contact with my children. Brothers and sisters, one of the reasons I don't mess with my father, and I'm going to say this to you, Grandpa Johnson, since you've been all over the internet slandering me with my enemies. You've been all over the internet. Now, you chilled out the last couple years, and I respect you for that. But nobody's father should be on the internet slandering their son with their enemies. Nobody's father should be on the internet slandering their son with their enemies. Nobody's father should be on the internet slandering their son with his enemies. You spent time with my daughter behind my back. You got close with my enemies, slandering me on the internet behind my back. I'm going to respectfully ask you, sir, stay the fuck out of my life and away from my children. I'm not going to tell you no more. I don't mess with you. I do not mess with you. Stay out my life. Stay away from my children. I'm not going to tell your ass no more.
So you see, Umar Johnson isn't yelling, screaming, but he is off the chart angry. And the key to knowing when Umar Johnson is angry, there are no theatrics. No theatrics. In these videos that he's been posting about this topic here, you don't see any theatrics. Silliness, giddiness, joking around, nothing like that. This is when you know Umar Johnson is dead ass serious. Does anybody have information on Jamal Johnson being a risk to children, being a danger to children, harming children? Even Umar Johnson isn't saying that. He's just saying he doesn't want his father in contact with his children. Why? Because he doesn't have contact? That's a stupid reason. Umar Johnson doesn't have contact because that's his choice. There are no risk issues. He would have said it. And Jamal Johnson had stated recently that he's not the type to go to court or something to the effect. But in case he wanted to go to court, he would have a case because there are grandparent visitation rights in Pennsylvania. So Umar Johnson wouldn't have a case anyway. He's expecting his father to defer to him. When it comes to trying to maintain bonds with his grandchildren, and it's ironic, don't you think, how Umar Johnson is disrespecting his own father, but then he's turning around and demanding his daughter or daughters give him red carpet treatment and treat him with the utmost respect. He has poor modeling. He's expecting what he's not demonstrating as a model. Umar Johnson is totally and completely disrespectful to his own father, but expects his daughter to treat him like a king. That's what it is, folks. And he's not getting what he wants, and he's getting more frustrated and more angry. His expectations are extremely unreasonable. And as he sees he's getting less and less of what he wants, he's getting more angry. Now, there have been a couple other instances since I've been around on YouTube when Umar Johnson has this demeanor. I'm not saying there aren't times when he's come on and just has been matter of fact, but I'm talking about just runaway train angry. It always centers on a father's role. When he's challenged about anything with respect to a father's role, in particular, his opinion about it, and if it's too close to his circumstance, this is when Umar Johnson loses it. Now, herein lies the reason why I've always had issues with Umar Johnson, because there's not enough of a separation between him personally and the so-called advice he's giving people. He's essentially giving people advice based on his life, and you don't ever want to do that as a provider. We don't give quote advice anyway. That's not what service is. It's a whole nother issue. We provide treatment and resources. We don't give clients advice. And Umar dispenses this information and advice based on his personal experience, his anger, his angst, his frustration, his unresolved issues. That's why it's so dangerous. But let me go back. There have been a few other times Umar Johnson has displayed this demeanor. One of the times was when he addressed the youngest mother. Umar wants people to believe he's an experienced mental health professional, that he's qualified, that he's a therapist, he's a child therapist, he's a family therapist, he's a psychologist. But he stands up there and he gave the name of the mother of his child. This is the youngest child. We did both, but I'm going to be specific. He gave the name of the youngest child. Also, he gave the name of the school where the child attended. He gave the name of the grandmother. He gave the name of the grandmother's restaurant that she owns. He identified the area of town where the restaurant is. He gave the address. And then he told the social media following to go to the address and confront the grandmother about the situation with the child support and all these other issues. Now, the mother of the child has her other professional responsibilities, but obviously she would be visiting the restaurant on a regular basis. And you know that the child would be there on a regular basis. This is the kind of thing I'm talking about. Umar Johnson engages in this very dangerous behavior and wants the world to believe he's the best one to dispense all of this quote advice to the black community and tell you this is the best way to handle a family conflict. To integrate, immerse, fuse boundaries with your own personal situation, and that's absolutely false. It's dangerous, it's deadly, it's destructive. It gets the people that you're working with concerned about you. Who is supposed to be receiving the services? Who's supposed to be receiving the care? The client, not the therapist, not the provider, not the school psychologist. You don't matter when you're trying to help other people. You matter once you leave the session and you go and take care of yourself. And there are many ways you do that. You don't bring your crap into the therapy session, into the school psychologist evaluation session, into the IEP meeting. You don't do it on social media during a parent conference when you're supposed to be helping other people. But Umar Johnson does just that. And here we are with the child support situation, him rallying people. Can I hear from all the fathers that are going through what I'm going through? And he's the best person to provide guidance that's objective? No, he is not. Yes, Umar Johnson was angry. Umar Johnson got online and was telling people to come and hunt us down, giving our addresses. You want addresses? We got addresses. Home and work. And he starts rattling it off. Pissed off. Exasperated. That's when Umar Johnson gets angry. No theatrics whatsoever. He made it damn sure he was going to get that information out. The other time he was out of control angry was when we were getting a lot of his events canceled because of this acid bigotry, these lies he was spreading about different groups, the dangerous information that he was dispensing, the threats that he was issuing against people. He decided to go online and started threatening us. But before he did that, he had another parent conference, like online, which he's not supposed to be doing because he's not attached to any school in Pennsylvania, in order to practice privately as a school psychologist. You're supposed to be working at a school in the state. It could be part-time, it could be full-time, it could be contracted, it could be volunteer. You need to be in a role as a school psychologist, and Umar Johnson is not. He actually is not eligible to work as a school psychologist because his continuing education units are expired. He's not updated. He had 5 years to get, 36 units? He didn't do it, and he couldn't get a waiver. So he's outdated. So he had a live stream doing an illegal, because back then he wasn't working with the school either. This is several years ago. There was a mother that came on saying her son did not want to see the father. Clue in, people. Umar Johnson. Now he's starting to get antsy. As the woman was talking, Umar Johnson was over-identifying because of his situation. The son did not want to see the father. The mother's giving information about the father. It's a horrible situation. The father had all of these things going on. The son was adamant. The son was, I think, 13 or 14 years old. Did not want to see the father. And the mother wants to know, should I force him to see his father? And Umar Johnson was saying, yes, because no matter how bad, I'm paraphrasing, the father is, it's better than having no dad at all. So Gerald caught the link and wanted to talk to Umar about that. He challenged Umar. Umar blew his stack. Oh my God. And guess what happened? What Umar doesn't often do. He does it, but not often. He dropped the F-bomb and completely freaked out. He jumped off the live. He was so angry. He was just out of his mind, just like he was here, addressing his father. The same type of behaviors in the same cluster of incidents that I'm telling you about, Umar Johnson does the same thing. He gave personal identifying information of the person that he was extremely angry at, furious. He lost it, okay? And told people to call the people he was angry at to harass them. And it sure enough did. I don't even know how many emails Gerald got and phone calls, harassing phone calls. And one of those phone calls was from Nelson Nobles. It was horrendous. Nelson Nobles worked at a school, but he did exactly what Umar Johnson told him to do. Call Reverend. He's telling him all these are derogatory names. To call Gerald Palmer and tell him this and tell him that. Isn't that some weak bullshit? Telling your social media following to harass somebody, but they sure enough listened and deluged Reb G's social media accounts, phone, email. And Nelson Nobles left a horrendously homophobic, race-attacking, gender-attacking, vulgar, sickening message. I mean, I probably shouldn't even play it here because YouTube's getting more strict. On Reb G's voicemail, multiple voicemails. And AFW, yes, were able to track him down. And I would shout out the person who was primarily responsible, but I don't want to put that person in a precarious situation. No, it was not True Black Anonymous. It was someone else, and we thank you. It was a team effort, but there was one person in particular who took the lead and found this idiot. And he ended up getting fired. He was working at a school in Virginia as an IT instructor, K through 12, or I think it was a middle school he was at. Because he listened to Umar Johnson. Umar Johnson was dropping the F-bombs, just like he was dropping the F-bomb on his own dad. My goodness gracious. Now, getting back to the reason why I had problems with Umar Johnson to begin with, he's using all of these templates, and I put those in quotations, about what you're supposed to be doing. Saying that's not African. Okay, so first off, what in the heck is that's not African? Is he talking about the African continent? Well, we know how many countries are on the African continent. You can't possibly tell me every single tribe on the African continent believes the same thing, has the same customs. We know they don't have the same language. Exactly what country and what tribe and what practice, what spiritual ideology are we talking about when it comes to it's not the African way to have a grandpa, or he calls him Grandpops Johnson, Umar's dad, to be able to see his granddaughter when I'm not, quote, allowed. That is a lie that he wasn't, quote, allowed. So if he's applying this to the continent of Africa, he needs to be more specific. What the hell is Umar Johnson talking about? I don't think Umar Johnson knows what he's talking about. Is he talking about Black Africans, American? Is he talking about ADOS, Black folks here in the United States, descendants of chattel slavery? He's talking about ADOS. We know that Umar Johnson is way off base. Listen, find me somebody, anybody in the United States walking around who's ADOS, who is going to deny that your average grandparent, by and large, kicking aside rare exceptions, going to flatten out the Himalayas to see the grandbaby. What grandparent is going to say, well, I'm not going to see my grandbaby because my son can't see the grandbaby. I'm not going to see that baby. I'm going to ignore my grandbaby because my son or my daughter can't see my grandbaby. That is ridiculous. Umar Johnson really thinks he's talking to who? A bunch of Klan members? He's talking to a bunch of black folks, and he thinks he can tell us about ourselves that our cultural leanings are what they aren't. That we're going to deny seeing a grandbaby because the father or mother, for whatever reason, isn't seeing the grandbaby. That is the most ridiculous thing I have ever heard. I don't even think Umar believes that shit. Just talking out of his ass. He decided on his own not to avail himself. Jamal Johnson was not going to be denied. That is the attitude Umar should have had. Umar's father wasn't going to be denied when it came to seeing his grandbabies. The fact that Umar decided that he couldn't control everything from A to Z and punish his children, that is on Umar. It is so ridiculous to sit here and that anger that he's carrying around. Lord have mercy. Where it comes from, he can't blame it on anything having to do with the birth. Because when the baby was born, he was already angry at his father. What got him angry at the birth that he's pissed off at his father? He was pissed off at his father before that. People, we already talked about that. There's a reason why Umar Johnson has been mad at his father for many, many, many years. And it happened before the babies were born. I gave my opinion. I thought it had to do with Umar being sent to that, was it the Scotland school? Apparently he was the only one out of 10 or 11 siblings that was sent there? What's the real reason Umar's pissed off? To the point where he's expecting his father to cut himself out of the life of his grandchildren to appease Umar, who doesn't even have a relationship with or a good relationship with. I can't think of anything more asinine than that bullshit. Umar's just mad because he missed out. He was not able to control other people when it came to missing out. He knows that grandparents all the time try to say, why don't they just stay over here about the grandbaby? They can just stay here with me. Why don't you just leave him here? How many times do grandparents say that? All day, every day. And wasn't the baby living with the grandparents or the grandma? Was the grandma anxious for the grandbabies to move out? You're going to have to get up out of here. Of course, we know there's exceptions, but they weren't in a hurry to kick that grandbaby and the mother out because they want the grandbaby there. You're going to sit here and be pissed at a grandfather who decided he wasn't going to be denied. That's the proper model for Umar, and Umar did not follow it. Now, if Umar wanted to be territorial, that would have been the time. What are you doing seeing my kid? I'm going to see my kid. No one's going to see my kid, and I'm not going to see my kid. That should have been the attitude. That should have been more important than anything in the world. That's the attitude that Umar Johnson's dad had. But Umar, again, decided if I don't get 100% of what I want, I'm going to punish my kids. I'm just not going to see them at all. He's not even thinking about what it does to his relationship with his kids. He was saying stuff like, when my baby was with me, I don't remember how old, I think maybe 2 or something. The mom said that she was having a hard time sleeping. And then when she came over to my place, she slept all through the night. I don't doubt that. Who is denying the paternal bond is just as strong? I don't believe in only the mother is bonded. That is bullcrap. Fathers are just as bonded to their children. But Umar did not maintain and nurture that bond. There is no denying that the story he told is true, that he was bonded to the child when he was with the child, but he decided not to continue. So these Stories he's coming up. And this is why it irritates me when Umar gets up and starts talking about families. He's only talking about families based on his own experience. And when you're providing services to families, you don't base it on your experience. Your experience has nothing to do with it. As a matter of fact, you factoring your experience makes you ineffective. It's not about you. It's about who's before you, their issues. Your experience is not a factor except for your ability and skill to excise your experience out of the situation. Your situation only comes in for a very limited purpose if it's relevant and it helps the client. If it's not beneficial to the client, you have no business bringing in your personal situation when you're working with clients. And Umar does that all the time. His whole personal life, he talks about and uses it as he's supposedly providing services. It is a devastating, dangerous, and destructive practice. And then he turns around and says he's a family therapist, he's a psychologist. This is embarrassing. It's unethical, and he needs to stop. He is not a therapist. He does not know how to work with families. There are strategies. There are all types of techniques that you learn, you are evaluated on. They actually watch you do them, and you need a whole host of other skills to effectively help families. You don't help families by griping about your personal situation to clients, where the client can turn around and be worried about you. It is not about you. Umar cannot separate anything from himself. It's always about him. Even the situation, it's about him. Yes, people don't want to be offended. Of course, people don't want to be embarrassed. But what about all those other years that just went by? He is only mad because his grandpa is continuing to have a relationship with the children that Umar specifically decided not to have relationships with. He'll find anybody to blame his own situation on. And forget this whole issue about quit talking about my business. I saw a clip. He was on talking about this, and then he was deleting people. Quit talking about my business. He was deleting people. He's up here talking about it, reading the comments. I'm blocking you. You in my business. And don't be asking me about my business, but you're talking about it. I don't know how, was it Instagram? How does it work? Can you turn off the comments? Don't have comments on there. If you don't want people commenting on your personal life that he's talking about. Umar telling his father, Jamal Johnson, stay away from my family. That's Jamal Johnson's family too. How you get? Oh my God. Oh, this is like a mess. But let me tell you this. Umar Johnson is putting this all out here and talking about it. It's fair game. People get to talk about what's happening, and people are talking about what's happening, and they will continue to talk about what's happening. I wanted to come on here because it just takes me back to the reason why I came on here to begin with, him merging his personal life with his claim of being a family therapist, a child therapist, a psychologist, all of these titles that he never had and never will be able to achieve. He has to put these titles forth because he knows, just standing alone with what he says, there is no credibility behind anything that Umar says. It's dangerous, it's destructive, it's not useful. He goes on theatrics. That's what Umar Johnson survives on. Not facts, not experience. It's survival mode for him. He's got to amp it up to keep people all enthralled, all engaged, so he can continue racking up money for just mere survival. It's coming to an end, like we've always stated it's coming to an end. It doesn't matter of the pace. What's important is that it happens. And we're getting there. We are not going to give up. We never gave up. Umar needs to stop using these titles, making money off of people's credentials, using other people's credentials and claiming he has experience that he doesn't have. He doesn't have any idea what he's talking about. He's up here Googling information while people are asking him questions. What has the world arrived at? This madness that Umar Johnson continues to bring to social media. And listen, I always have more. I surely will be bringing your way. But in the meantime, folks, you know the drill. Buyer beware.